During these wild years I ask myself, is there any better way to respect the decline of the West than by reading Nietzsche, the man who published his first work out when he was 13 and, in the end, inspired by Max Stirner, decided to change the field of philosophy as a 20-something incel. Thus Spoke Zarathustra is without a doubt the man's magnum opus. I read the book in a few sittings because the text tasted like sweet honey mead which you could get drunk of. The truth is that when over 100 years ago Nietzsche wrote this book, he wasn't writing it for the European of that era, but he was specifically writing it for you and I. It's the red pill in the form of a prose. The book is full of detail and clever puns, the most poetic and unique text from Nietzsche. I myself read the Finnish translations and they were both superb in quality. I must also conclude that this video is more about the thoughts and rambles regarding Thus Spoke Zarathustra than a proper book review. The book deserves to be read a few times because of its depth, and maybe someday I will come back and make a proper analysis review. But I do want to give out my honest first reactions, or perhaps I should say first love of the book. I've hammered the video into the following segments. First, I give a brief overview on how I view Nietzsche's philosophy and how it affects his writing. Then I highlight the religion Zoroastrianism, how this ancient Jesus-preceding Persian religion has affected the great European thinker. After all of that, we can finally get to the bottom of all things, which are, of course, my thoughts and rambles on the book. Let us begin with the great Antichrist himself. Nietzsche was the first philosopher who began to study the decline of the West. What happens when our culture loses its richness and becomes an empty shell? If you don't understand what the decline of the West could mean, ask yourself this. Has, for example, Christmas become nothing more than the whore exploitation of capitalism, or are you still lucky enough to celebrate it with a loving family? For how many is midsummer just an excuse to drown yourself in alcohol? Ask yourself, have your personal standards through the years risen or lowered? We live in the world where there are no traditions nor rights. We live in a world where the global elite has the power and they use their powers aggressively to progress their own causes. God is dead and no one can stop these noble savages from making the earth paradise, which will be inhabited by the last men. Who are the last men? Materialistic, selfish little cretins, living off the coast with the help of modernity, who cannot know what it feels to have self-respect, creativity, honor, or love. All they want is pleasure and safety. Conflicts are meant to be avoided because risk and responsibility are too stressful of an emotion. Yet despite all of these, the last men hate and are jealous of those who take risks and succeed in life. For the last men, the world is nothing more than good or evil. Nietzsche wanted to destroy the concepts of good and evil. There's just us. We make our own decisions and we do not ponder our actions through the lenses of black and white. We simply act. We are warriors who play by our own rules. Mankind was first a camel, then we became lions, until we inevitably became children. As camels, we complained about the unfair conditions the world set on us. As lions, we conquered and created safety around us, so we could live like children. Our mission is to create something greater than us. The body is like a temple, which mind is either pure or filthy. We must go beyond good and evil. We must go beyond truth itself, which is why Nietzsche wanted to take inspiration from Zoroastrianism. So let us delve into the ancient Indo-Aryan religion.
You, me, or nobody is gonna hit as hard as life. But it ain't about how hard.
Zarathustra was a teacher in an ancient Persian kingdom, and he taught mankind that gods were all just demons who demanded sacrifices. Sometimes they asked for cattle, and sometimes they asked for your serpent's head. Why should you worship demons? Why should you subjugate yourself into a slave, when with free will you can overcome yourself as like an overman? Nietzsche felt that Zoroastrianism's objective was to improve the world for both man and nature alike with the universal truth. Truth being so powerful that it went beyond democratic concepts such as morals. The truth is always more important than any morals, virtues, or vices, according to Zarathustra. You can probably paint a picture why Nietzsche would be interested in Zoroastrianism in the Christian Germany. Nietzsche and Zarathustra's teachings were meant to help us for the future, so that we would be internally stronger. To be frank, Zoroastrianism could be described as archaeofuturistic, but that's a whole new topic for another day. Both saw the common struggles of civilizations, and with its meditative thought and seeing the world as it is, that we are able to create meaning for ourselves, one that is greater than what earthly life can offer us. Nietzsche's and Zarathustra's worldviews did not always go hand in hand. In Zoroastrianism, God created the world with his will alone. Good and evil were clearly separated from each other, and thus moral dualism came from the battle between good and evil. The gray area does not exist, as the world is as black and white as Mad Max Fury Road. We decide, do we want to be good or evil? The earthly heaven was offering equality, spiritual communions, free love, and social justice for everyone. Not this despotism that liberalism brought us, but a pure Platonic utopia. Nietzsche, on the other hand, admired Alexander the Great's cultural enrichments, where powerful aristocrats ruled, and democracy was nothing more than a hilarious punchline to a mocking joke. Zoroastrianism as a religion itself is intriguing to say the least. It focuses on the difference between good and evil, where your inner virtues are compared to your shadowy vices. In the end, we all become either creatures of light or darkness. For Nietzsche, Zarathustra was a skeptic. Through his willpower alone, he had attained spiritual strength and freedom that gave him a superior spirit. He, Zarathustra, saw the last men as nothing more than slaves of moral obligations. Thus in this book, Nietzsche utilizes Zarathustra as his own personal Jesus figure, who hammers and dismantles everything to pieces. So, let us finally begin hammering Nietzsche's Thus Spoke Zarathustra. Nietzsche's Zarathustra was an overman, the man of tomorrow. His warnings went to deaf ears hundreds of years ago, but will we heed his warning? Here the spirit became a lion, freedom will it capture, and lordship in its wilderness. Its last lord it here seeketh, hostile will it be to him, and to its last god. For victory will it struggle with the great dragon. The spirit became a camel, the camel a lion, and the lion at last a child. Our lives have become juvenile. We are grown adults who, instead of seeking adventures of our own, settle down as willing bystanders to others, as we watch the latest season of Temptation Island from our pods. As old farts, we nag about young men who don't know how to pick the right cutlery, nor do they take their caps off while indoors. Our lives have just become that of non-player characters. That's what you are doing right now as well, isn't it, my friend? It's okay. As a child, it's so hard to be the prisoner of your thoughts. Those thoughts that move in your head can be worrisome even to ourselves. That's why phones were invented, luckily. Now, we never have to be alone with our thoughts. You flee to your neighbor from yourselves, and would rather make a virtue of it, but I fathom your unselfishness. You cannot endure yourselves and do not love yourselves sufficiently, so you seek to mislead your neighbor into love, to guilt yourself with his error. My brothers, I advise you not to laugh of the neighbor, I advise you to love the farthest. It is difficult to live among men because silence is so difficult, and not to him who is offensive to us are we most unfair, but to him who does not concern us at all. If, however, you have a suffering friend, then be a resting place for his suffering, like a hard bed, however, a camp bed, thus will you serve him best. And if a friend does you wrong, then say, I forgive you what you have done to me. That you have done to yourself, however, how could I forgive that? Can you be judge for yourself, an avenger of your law? But one day the solitude will weary you, one day your pride will yield, and your courage quail. You will one day cry, I am alone. How many of us are in bad relationship or keep friends of bad faith close to us because we do not dare to be alone? How many of us in our loneliness seek kindred spirits just to feel some sense of commune? We feel like we are individuals, clever little geniuses with our thoughts and rambles, but it's never enough. We must tell our closest loved ones and even convince them how red-pilled and based we are. We become resentful of the ones we love, because they do not understand us. Honestly, it's easy to become an overman in the modern world. Now, don't quote Zarathustra or Nietzsche for saying this, but I, the forest entity. Here's what you need to win this game called life in the information revolution. Basic mathematics so you can count your budgets, taxes, and have some understanding of pattern recognition. Writing and speech, which you can hone with writing and reading daily, which will inevitably develop you a love for reading. With love of reading and solving problems, you can hone your skills at becoming a software developer and unlock the alchemy of modern science. With these skills, it's easy to walk the path that Zarathustra is setting us. The love of the farthest. I'm talking, of course, of digital entrepreneurship, self-expression, and the importance of individualism. My brother, if you would be a star, you must shine for them nonetheless on that account. These are, but of course, only my interpretations of Zarathustra's wisdom. They are interpretations how you can suit Zarathustra's teaching in the golden age of humanity. If the world is being ruled by the last men, it's up to us to rise to the heavens like the Nephilim. Alas, that is always easier said than done. Zarathustra returned again into the mountains to the solitude of his cave, and withdrew himself from men, waiting like a sower who has scattered his seed. His soul, however, became impatient and full of longing for those whom he loved, because he had still much to give them, for this is the hardest of all, to close the open hand out of love and keep a modest as a giver. Will empathizes this. That is the true doctrine of will and emancipation. So teaches you Zarathustra. And this secret spoke life herself to me. Behold, she said, I am that which you must ever overcome itself. Self-overcoming. That is your entire will, you wisest ones, as a will to power, and even when you speak of good and evil, and of estimates of value, you would still create a world before which you can bow the knee. Such is your ultimate hope and ecstasy. It was you, the wisest ones, who put us guests in his boat and gave them pomp and proud names, you and your ruling will. But the worst enemy you can meet will always be yourself. You ambush yourself in caverns and forests. You solitary one, you go the way to yourself. and your way leads you past yourself and your 7 devils, you will be a heretic to yourself, and a sorcerer, and a soothsayer, and a fool, and a doubter, and a reprobate, and a villain. You must be ready to burn yourself in your own flame. How could you rise anew if you have not first become ashes? Zarathustra indeed hammers everything to pieces. Here's the thing, guys. I always enjoy a good book that makes me consider my own actions and decisions. How could I be a more efficient version of myself and reach new heights? The book is rich with its metaphors, symbolism, puns, and emotions. Nietzsche prompted people to write on their own blood, and truly, Thus Spoke Zarathustra was written with his bleeding heartbeats. Nietzsche, of course, brought up his distaste against the holy, using Zarathustra as his mouthpiece for the next lectures. And be on your guard against the good and the just. They would rather crucify those who create their own virtue. They hate the solitary ones. Uncommon is the highest virtue, and useless. You thirst to become sacrifices and gifts yourselves. Towards himself man is the cruel animal, and in all who call themselves sinners and bearers of the cross and penitents, do not overlook the voluptuousness in their plans and accusations. The ugliest of us find strength in folk religion, rising in hierarchy by serving their own ass. Life is suffering. We live in the age of conflict where people are against their own will being forced to fight amongst their brothers. We suffer because we are the victims of our own values, regardless if we were social justice warriors fighting for climate change or patriots of the motherland. We suffer because we all want to be good and just. However, to be good, we need the opposite. Oh, how we suffer spiritually because we see the world in black and white. The spirit should serve the body, but we became stressful and frustrated with others. Our spirit suffers because we participate in the values of civilized world. Values come from passions. You permit your own values to make you motivated, but where do you need motivation? Can't you get your ass up from the bed? Values cannot be the reason for action, let alone for judging others. Too many values bring forth internal conflicts. Hold on to your own values and suffer the consequences alone. Values are like demons, the false angels. Your virtues are your conflicted monologues. Thus Spoke Zarathustra is full of beautiful concepts that are so rich that they surely fly past me by my first read-throughs. Nietzsche too was a victim of his own passions, but when you remember the little things, such as the man was a poor war veteran who was consistently cursed with illness, I cannot act any other way than to raise my hat and thank him for his service. Nietzsche had a dirty mouth, and I do feel that the frogs of the modern world, these internet provocators and trolls, are in some weird way Nietzsche's bastard children. Nietzsche indeed hammered everything to pieces like trolls do today. Internet trolls are usually not worth a listen, but Nietzsche is well worth the read. Let us conclude this video with just a few more quotations from Zarathustra's wisdom. With the old deities has it long since come to an end, and verily, a good joyful deedy end had they. They did not twilight themselves to death, that do people fabricate. Ha! On the contrary, they laughed themselves to death, once at a time. We murdered our gods so we could become like them. Let us write our own gospels. Nietzsche recognized the beauty of physical might, and the ugliness slave morality would wreak upon civilization. Nietzsche dismantled religions with his hammer so that we could become gods, overmen. What is an overman? Is it Superman, the man of tomorrow from a distant future, who walks like a god amongst the mortal? Did Nietzsche talk about the technological gods like the Flash and Cyborg? Or did he mean someone akin to Geralt of Rivia, a mutant and a bounty hunter philosopher overman? Well, one thing is certain. If you have to ponder, are you an overman? Then you aren't one for sure. Overman is a state of being, one you cannot learn from reading books alone. The overman is a man of solitude, a weird spark in the eyes of civilization. So, few of us dare to be alone with our own virtues. We are, after all, a group of chimps. We want certainty and a direction from leaders. We are simple-minded creatures who want to understand everything, hence why we cannot comprehend anything. The overman, on the other hand, is a free spirit, free to be himself. Nietzsche said that the decision to do nothing is greater than wasting your time for meaningless events. That you only do because you are incapable of filling your own calendar with your own tasks. And that's the key. The will not to act. Do not react to the outside world, but fill your calendar with what your soul desires. Amor fati, my good people. Love your fate and take control of your life. It's worthless to care about civilization's moral restrictions and the norms of modern society. We are this world's sovereign individuals. To us, goodness is something to overcome, and evil is to subject yourself to someone else's will. It is our duty to show what the world truly looks like, with no two-facedness or the sweet lies of moral double standards. The world is what it is, indeterminate. You decide what you want with your willpower, with your fire. That a man is a bridge and not a goal, rejoicing over his new times and evenings as advances to a new rosy dawns. Thus spoke Zarathustra.